Was lovingly raised by my grandparents. But then, a minor accident took the life of my beloved grandmother. During that difficult time, I unexpectedly received a message from my long-lost sister-in-law. The message read, "I need you to take care of your grandmother who passed away 3 months ago." I was at a loss for words. There was so much I wanted to say, but my cherished grandmother was no longer there. I had seen her pass with my own eyes. That call became the catalyst for everything that would soon come to light. My name is Linda Thompson, a 45-year-old single woman. The last time a significant man was in my life was during college. After we parted ways, I threw myself into the working world, landing a position in the marketing department of a major cosmetics company. Working overtime and weekends became the norm. Before I knew it, I had missed my chance to get married. Though that wasn't the reason I eventually left my job. 6 years ago, I transitioned into a desk job at a nursing home. The commute was a dream, just a 10-minute bike ride from home, a far cry from the hour and a half I used to spend on crowded trains. I've never moved out of my childhood home. Financially unsecure, and I'm quite capable around the house, if I do say so myself. So why stay? The answer is simple. I love my family, especially my dear grandmother. I was born and raised in California. My family consists of my parents, grandparents, and my brother, Brian, who is 5 years older than me. Now 50, Brian and I have a complicated relationship. As children, I adored him. He was a gentle, caring older brother. But after college, he changed. He got a job in car sales, moved out, and married a woman from work just 2 years later. We gradually grew apart, and he stopped coming home for holidays. Thanksgiving, spring break, even Christmas. I know he lives somewhere in the South, but I don't know where or if he has children. I can't even remember the last time I saw his face or heard his voice. The last thing I recall him saying was, "I'm leaving everything at home to you." As I rose through the ranks at work and became a manager, life got busier. My impression of Brian hardened into one of an unfeeling man. That's why I chose to stay in my childhood home and protect it. My parents are retired, and my 93-year-old grandfather, who suffered a stroke a few years ago, requires constant care. My parents take care of him now. And then there's my grandmother, Betty Thompson, aged 92, the woman I adored most in the world. My grandparents raised me when both my parents were working, and Grandma Betty, in particular, taught me everything I needed to know about life. Though she couldn't get out much in recent years, she was still lively, walking around the house on her own. That's why I decided to work at a nursing home, so I could be close to her if anything happened. One day, as I was getting ready to leave for work, Grandma Betty called out to me, "You forgot something." I didn't forget anything, I replied, but she handed me a few black licorice candies. "Here, take these." I smiled. Licorice had always been a favorite of ours. I tucked them into my suit pocket and left the house with a smile. Then tragedy struck, sudden and devastating. Grandma Betty had a severe accident. According to my father, after hanging laundry on the balcony as usual, she missed a step on the stairs and fell. We had always warned her about the stairs, telling her to leave the laundry to Mom and Dad, but Grandma Betty was as stubborn as I am. She believed in doing what she could on her own. It was an unfortunate accident, something we always feared. After suffering complex fractures in her femur and pelvis, she never made it home from the hospital. 4 months later, she passed away due to old age. I was heartbroken. I cried until I could cry no more. But I'm an adult now, and as the breadwinner of this household, I don't have the luxury of wallowing in sorrow. I had to handle everything: funeral arrangements, cremation, interment. Grandma Betty was originally from the Midwest, and with no close relatives to contact, we decided in a family meeting to have a small funeral with just close family members. We had to invite my brother and his wife, and I assumed they'd come without hesitation. But I was wrong. I couldn't reach them by phone or WhatsApp. I even sent an email, but there was no reply. As a last resort, I sent a text message, and the reply came on the day of the cremation. "I'm very busy overseas for work. Sorry, but I can't make it. I'll send the money later." I didn't care about the money. When I saw that message, I found myself speaking out loud without meaning to. Could his job really be so important that he couldn't find the time to say goodbye to the grandmother who adored us so much? It was hard to accept. At the funeral, we placed flowers in Grandma's casket, her makeup impeccably done, making her look as if she were peacefully sleeping. We included a photo of Grandpa and her favorite black licorice candy. While doing this, something shifted in my perception of my brother. From that moment, I started to despise him. Since then, the seasons have changed, and it's now winter. For me, it doesn't matter whether it's spring, summer, autumn, or winter. I don't care if it's always winter or always summer. I've even considered quitting my job, but Grandpa is still alive, and my parents will need care at some point too. I still need to earn a lot for that. With these thoughts, I mechanically got through my work, my heart filled with emptiness. Then, during a lunch break on a weekday, I received a call from an unexpected person. If the number hadn't been registered, I wouldn't have answered. My smartphone displayed the name Heather Thompson. She's my brother's wife, making her my sister-in-law. The only time we ever talked was briefly after their wedding. And that's all I remember. Why would she be calling now? I considered ignoring it, but the ringing wouldn't stop. Finally, I sighed and decided to answer. Yes, this is Linda. Sorry to disturb you at work. This is Heather, Brian's wife. It's been a while. Heather started, her tone apologetic. Despite being in a higher position and older than me, she always maintained a humble attitude. When she suddenly decided to marry my brother, she made sure to greet my parents and me, even on behalf of my brother. To put it simply, she's a good person. That's why I couldn't understand why she would contact me now. It's okay. Do you need something? I tried my best not to sound cold as I asked. It's hard for me to bring this up. Heather hesitated before continuing. It's about Betty, your grandmother. What happened to my grandmother? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We've been taking care of her on my husband's orders, but it's already been over a month. Could you possibly come to pick her up? What? I couldn't comprehend what Heather was saying. So you're saying you've been taking care of my grandmother Betty, who died 3 months ago? Yes, we've been taking care of Betty at our. Wait, she died 3 months ago? Heather's voice was genuinely surprised. Why don't we calm down a bit? I suggested, and Heather agreed. A few minutes later, after regaining my composure, I carefully explained to Heather how my grandmother had passed away. In contrast, Heather's response was utterly perplexing. She claimed that she and Brian had been told to take care of my grandmother until arrangements were made at her home, and that they had been living together with her. There were only two possible conclusions. Either we were both not lying, or my brother Brian was. I had anticipated this to some extent, wondering why anyone would tell such a blatant lie that would be exposed so quickly. But now, there were things I needed to do before confronting him. I wanted to get in touch with Brian right away, but he was basically unreachable. I told Heather, I've never used my husband's cell phone either. He won't let me, she continued. However, I think I could talk to him on my cell phone while he's at home. He's been working remotely more often lately. I think if I ask, he'd probably agree to a video call. There's certainly power in face-to-face persuasion. But there was a problem. I wasn't even sure where they were living anymore. We've been living in Nye City, California, for over 10 years, so it's easy for us to visit your place, Linda, Heather said. We agreed to talk to Brian on Heather's cell phone that night and ended the call. As I hung up, mixed feelings swirled inside me. I-City was just the next town over, and the idea that Brian expected me to care for some stranger's elderly relative just a few months after Grandma passed away filled me with repugnance. That evening, at the agreed time of 8 p.m., I called Brian using Heather's cell phone. By the way, Heather was also in the room with me at home. Despite my constant attempts to contact him in the past, Brian answered Heather's cell phone after just 3 rings. I made sure Heather could hear the conversation by putting it on speaker. Heather, where are you right now? You haven't even prepared dinner, Brian demanded in an imposing, arrogant tone. He was no longer the brother I knew. It's me, Brian, I declared firmly. Huh? He was clearly confused, and I waited for him to find his words. That's Linda, isn't it? Why, where's Heather? He stammered. I'm here, Heather responded, her tone steady. You? Why are you with Linda? Brian's voice wavered. Did you tell Linda about that matter? He asked, trying to regain control of the conversation. Yes, I did, Heather replied calmly. I told you it was too early to talk about it. Brian's frustration was evident. Ignoring his outburst, I pressed on. Heather mentioned that you've been working remotely lately. Why don't we talk face-to-face using a video call app? I'll send you the ID and password. If you refuse, I'll take Linda and go back home, Heather added, providing backup. Fine, Brian grudgingly agreed, his tone reluctant. I sent the login details using Heather's smartphone, and we waited. When Brian's face finally appeared on the screen, I noticed he looked slightly heavier than the last time I saw him. But it was undoubtedly my brother. So, what's so important that we have to face each other to talk about? I'm busy. Brian tried to play dumb, and it made my blood boil. Isn't it obvious? It's about our grandmother, I said, my voice sharp. What do you mean by saying we should take in our grandmother who died 3 months ago? I asked, my frustration barely contained. To my surprise, Brian replied calmly, you must be misunderstanding something. Our grandmother isn't dead. I'm taking care of her at my place. It was you, Linda, who asked for this, wasn't it? What? I was at a loss for words. Was he really so afraid of Heather finding out the truth? Could my brother really stoop this low? I sent you a text message, I said, my voice trembling with tears. I don't remember, Brian responded flatly. Grandma's here with me right now. Do you want me to bring her here? Yes, I do, I insisted, trying to maintain control of my emotions. Brian left his seat and returned a few minutes later with an old woman in a wheelchair. Say hello, Grandma. Linda, it's been a while. I'm Betty, the old woman spoke in a halting voice. I just wanted him to stop this farce. The woman on the screen looked nothing like our beloved grandmother. For one thing, my grandmother would never call me Linda. As you age, your appearance changes. She's been showing signs of dementia recently, so it can't be helped that her memories of you are vague, Brian said, determined to deny everything. So you won't acknowledge the death certificate submitted by the district office? I asked, incredulous. Of course not. Documents can be forged these days, he smirked. I was prepared for this. Just wait, Brian. I'll show you some evidence too. Leaving a perplexed Brian behind, I exited the room. A few minutes later, I returned with my evidence. Well, isn't it, Brian? Long time no see, you ungrateful one. Grandpa. Brian's eyes widened in shock. You were supposed to be bedridden. At one point, I was prepared to die. Even now, I can't go to the bathroom on my own. But my brain's still in good shape, Grandpa continued. I've heard all about it from Linda. Are you saying that the woman next to you is my wife, Betty? Nonsense. Betty was much more beautiful. Cornered, Brian hung up, likely trying to log out of the video call. Heather, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. Are you running away, Brian? Going to Catherine's place. Brian's face turned pale, visible even through the computer screen. How do you know that? I suspected it for a while now, Brian. You underestimate me, Heather said, her voice firm. Your grandmother has frequently let it slip, Catherine. But that's not Linda's name, nor her mother's. Well, Brian trailed off. I confirmed with Linda, and she had no recollection of the name Catherine. I had a suspicion and hired a private detective to investigate possible infidelity. Heather continued, laying out her evidence. The results came out quickly. Pictures of you with Catherine, your affair, and the fact that her grandmother is the woman you've been caring for. Heather paused, letting the information sink in. You've been preparing to divorce me, haven't you? Using every means possible to remarry Catherine. But I've caught you. Brian's attempt to maintain his composure crumbled. I'm really sorry. Forgive me, Heather. Linda, I didn't mean to deceive you. I'll break up with Catherine. Heather didn't flinch. I've already completed the divorce mediation process, Brian. I'm going back to my parents' house. We'll meet in court next. Well then, goodbye, big brother, I said, and with those words, I ended the video call. The seasons have changed, and now, during the autumn equinox, I visited my grandmother's grave alone. Hands clasped together, I silently reported everything that had happened. Brian divorced Heather, and naturally, the outcome was overwhelmingly in Heather's favor. Brian ended up paying an enormous amount of alimony and even came crying back home at one point. However, thanks to Grandpa, who was still mentally sharp, a virtual disarmament took place. Even his will states that Brian is no longer family. He wished to remarry Catherine. But women in this world are not so eager to marry a divorced man in his 50s with no savings and debt. Brian eventually had to quit his job at the automobile company and is now reportedly living in a cheap one-bedroom apartment, paying alimony while working odd jobs. It's all a case of reaping what you sow. Most of this information about Brian came from Heather, who I've grown close to. We often meet for tea as friends now. Grandmother, I finished everything, I whispered, standing up from the gravestone. A slightly strong breeze blew, and at the same time, I heard a voice I loved so much. Lynn, thank you. Please take care of your grandpa for a little while, the voice said. Grandmother, I muttered, suddenly noticing something in my right hand. It was a piece of black candy, her favorite. But that was strange. I hadn't brought any black candy as an offering today. I'm not particularly a believer in gods or ghosts, but could it be? No, that couldn't be. There's always black candy at the altar, so I must have picked one up unconsciously and put it in my pocket without realizing it. But still, if I think that my grandmother is watching over me from somewhere, I feel like I can keep doing my best in life. Thank you, grandmother, I murmured, looking up at the sky before leaving the graveyard.